I haven't been under canvas since I rubbed my knees together in the Ashdown forest to light a fire. In the old days, what my sister's kids called the very, very old days, if you ever wanted to get your weekly dose of tribal violence, you didn't pop down to the football match, no, you went out and fought the local enemy. And that's what hundreds of people do every weekend in Britain. They're called historical reenactors, and they leap on their horses and into their carriages and chariots, which these days are called Volvos, and they come to places like this in order to beat 10 tons of whatnot out of the enemy. Now, they do it with scrupulous authenticity. We're not doing a couple of loo rolls and a squeezy bottle here. We're talking authenticity almost to the point of killing each other, though not quite, and that's probably why they call it living history. This is a Saxon village, early in the morning, about 9:94, I reckon. And breakfast having been eaten, lunch about to be prepared over there, tent number 4, a bit of nettle puree. This afternoon, who knows what'll happen? There's an air of expectation because there may be serious fluctuations on the linen exchange, or there may be an invasion. If you wanted to invade England successfully, and the aeroplane hadn't been invented yet, then you had to do it through Thanet. So the Meridian region has been plagued for centuries with marauding foreigners, not coming over just for the summer to learn English, but with their eyes firmly fixed on some really juicy real estate. And now, every weekend, from Dover to Dorchester, Pevensey to Porchester, the daring do of these pre-microwave campfire warriors is being reenacted by the descendants of Sven the stamp collector and Hadrian the enthusiast. At English heritage sites alone last year, over 7,000 weekend warriors took part in 200 reenactments, cheered on by 325,000 weeds who only wanted to watch and weren't prepared to wield their own spears. And in the current era of niche marketing, you can pretty much pick your own era. If you've got nice legs, a firm appreciation for discipline and an ear for Latin drill, then you can join the Roman army in their occupation of Britain. Or, for a more individual approach and the sort of loose rucking that would deliver Will Carling a quick result over the All Blacks, join the Vikings and the Saxons. In medieval times, jousting became the preferred form of battle, and there's still a pretty festive atmosphere at today's tournaments. However, for a truly impressive display of massed armies and authentic taste of the chaos and noise of war, the English Civil War provides the greatest gathering of troops and the biggest collection of bangs.
So we do about 200 living history events across the country now every summer. They're immensely popular. There's about 400 living history groups in Britain today, but we tend to only ask about 50 of them to work with us. It has to be spot on. We like to think that the shows we do are in the right place at the right time with the right people. Otherwise, there's no point in doing it if you mislead people.
I know from an educational point of view, particularly with children, it brings the pages of books to life if they actually see us in the armour and equipment.
They're highly visual, and I think that school kids particularly learn more in an afternoon at one of these shows than in the whole term at school.
Sin, 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 deck, sin.
Where possible in our group, we do base ourselves on people who actually lived. And I'm playing the role of Primus Pilus, who died in about 122 AD.
So I command Sidnams, which is a Dorset regiment. Some of us dress better than others, perhaps it's just the style. We are a parliamentarian force. We are committed to throwing Charles off the throne, but we don't particularly want the guy executed. We just feel that things are not working very well in the country at the moment.
Purely pagan people.
I'm the actual leader of the Viking army. I started off as a slave in service to a lord. I then was given my freedom.
Did you have to earn your freedom?
Oh yes.
How did you do that?
Service and fealty to my lord.
And to swear it before God on this sword and these holy relics.
And that's all it takes for fresh-faced young Olaf there to become Thane of Oxford. Plus a couple of gifts, of course. Lovely. Just what I've always wanted, a new pair of leggings and garters.
Is it a military rank?
No, that's a social rank.
Oh, I see. So you're like, have you got an estate to come with a bit of land, or just leggings?
Oxfordshire.
The whole of Oxfordshire?
Yes.
You just got Oxfordshire?
I just got Oxfordshire.
I've worked myself up to be the second in command to the Centurion for whenever he gets injured in battle or killed, whatever the worst, then I take over his command temporarily.
So your rank is?
I'm the Octio.
I'm just a plain common legionary, but I'm from a different legion. They're from the 20th and I'm from the 2nd Augustan. We wear a different colour tunica, and we have different design shields, and slightly different equipment.
And at the moment, Roman tracksuit bottoms.
No, I'm wearing brackeye.
Do people think you're odd?
Of course they do. Yes. Usually they say you're mad.
Yeah. Or they're just standoffish. I think that's what it is.
What, a bit nervous, like they might catch it?
Oh, yeah, yes. Good God, it might rub off.
Shouldn't he be in a home? He keeps
well, that's the reason we have. That's the reason we have them penned up in between double rows.
I abhor war and violence, believe it or not, and this is a good outlet.
As soon as you pick up a sword and start, you're given the chance to hit another sword. You are hooked.
Well, you would be if your day job didn't give you an outlet for mass slaughter.
Drive them over a corpse, fails.
And what do you do when you're not Thane of Oxford?
I'm actually in system support for Tesco distribution.
Verger. Ex-Verger, Bristol Cathedral.
You're kidding? You're a bit of a religious man?
No. An interesting question. I'm actually working in advertising. I work for email.
I'm an engineer.
What sort?
Mechanical.
What do you do when you're not being an Octio?
Well, I'm not being an Octio, as in, how do you mean?
In real life.
As in real life, this is my real life. I go around schools giving lectures to children.
Oh, it couldn't be different. I'm a space technologist. You know, I'm the only astronaut centurion probably who's ever existed.
You're in the army now, and there's drill, and there's discipline.
Roast beef. Die! Crocodile. Die! Dex! 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 See? Dex! Retro! Whoa! Square T! Die! Unus dua! Dex! 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 Sin!
Weapon!
Say the staff. It enables me to dish out, if you like, a bit of discipline without actually hurting anybody. Well, as such, there's no point on it, you know.
Without hurting anybody. Well, anyway, he's a lot more benign than this little Roman Hitler.
Soldiers and into the packed ranks behind, smashing heads, smashing limbs, smashing shields. Absolutely deadly.
What is the Latin for corporal punishment?
The next aspect, which is the really important bit, the honour of the regiment, is winning the pike fights, and they're called presses. And that's where we all get very close together, all right? And that's where we all form a big tight knot, and then we squash the opposition. When you're doing pike pressing, instead of being like 3 foot away from the man in front, you're literally going to be this close to him, all right? Now, if you can't push properly, you're useless. There may be 40 of us, it doesn't matter, they'll push you over. So you have to know how to do it properly.
Bill, any thong in there?
They seek him here, they seek him there. His clothes are loud, but never square. It will make or break him, so he's got to buy the best, cause he's a dedicated...
Centurions are the only ones who wear greaves, these leg guards on their legs. These are more for rank than protection, because they were only thin metal. With all the standard bearers and musicians, they wear animal skins over their helmets. In the case of this gentleman, he's wearing a European brown bear.
Dedicated follower of fashion. Oh yes he is. Oh yes he is. Oh yes he is. Oh yes he is. Thinks he is a flower to be looked at. And when he pulls his frilly nylon and it's raked up tight, he feels a dedicated follower of fashion.
Great outfit. Who made it?
I did. I mean, all of it. It took a few months. But, it's all hand-stitched to the boots. I picked all the bits up at boot sales and shop things. Just picked up scraps and just put it all together. So I was actually quite lucky with the cost. It's probably about 30 quid in total.
It's not really so much the cost of the materials, because the armour and equipment we make ourselves. So it's the time involved and the effort involved in making it. Obviously, to replace the armour, if we had to go to full-time armourers, would be something like £5,000 to £6,000.
Over a period of 2 years, I would say about £1,000 for different uniforms and different accoutrements to go. Gauntlets, swords, sticks.
People must think you're balmy.
No, I wouldn't say that. They're curious.
Oh, yes, he is. He flits from shop to shop just like a butterfly. In matters of the cloth, he is as thick as can be, because he's a dedicated follower of fashion.
And ladies, please grab a Roman soldier and examine his armour and equipment.
Now for some real excitement. The Vikings are about to invade the Saxon village.
Viking!
That's it. War against him, for he wishes us no good.
The Saxon king seems to be waiting for a parley before the battle, because of course in all proper disputes, you talk before you strike.
By Wolfmouth, Thane of Sussex.
A flock of English sheep before us. We shall drive you into the sea where you belong.
Well, they could have resolved it over a nice cup of mead, but very quickly talks break down and the battle begins.
Killing as they go. Is it imminent? Back upon and charge to the breeze field.
So at this crucial moment in the battle, it's Angles 1 and Saxons 0. More later.
Thank you.
Great. The battle is over. The Saxons are triumphant. The Viking dead lie crumpled on the ground, their leader humiliated and captured.
Well, not a great result, eh?
We got absolutely smacked.
How do you feel?
Got it.
So what happened? What happened?
Obviously, we needed plan B, but we couldn't think of one.
Well, what happened? Well, you got faced, everybody faced up, and then there was a negotiation, and then you got pushed back. Why didn't you push harder?
just got outflanked.
What, around the side?
And beaten by a better side on the day.
Probably the most glamorous military force of all are the cavalry. They present tremendous problems for the reenactors simply because of the expense, but they're indispensable. By the Middle Ages, the mounted knight ruled the battlefield. Despite being so heavy, he had to be hoisted onto his horse. During the Civil War, probably spurred on by only getting to wear metal helmets rather than beautiful plumage, Cromwell's Roundheads became one of the most effective and best known of all fighting forces. By the 19th century, the cavalry was even smarter. Although these British dragoons made a slight error by copying their uniforms from the French, just causing the tiniest confusion on the Napoleonic battlefields. But in this display, there's no confusion who the enemy is. It's the turnips. Of course, a person cannot live by violence alone. You've got to have nettle soup. You may well have seen food as old as this on British Rail, but this stuff has to be absolutely historically accurate. Best end of Saxon with veg cut by an authentic dicing dagger.
Yes, hang on now.
The Romans didn't just have baths, they had portable, probably cordless flour mills.
The bread would be made as it was needed, and it would be ate fresh. By next morning, it's as hard as rock.
The point of the camps is to provide you and I with a real and historical sense of what it was like to live in the very, very old days.
There's Obviously cooking going on at all the fires. Andy, are you leather working this morning?
Yep.
And Colin's the archery person. He's got authentic arrows as well as others. Oh, children, we do need permission from your own mother's mouth. You get them here to say it's all right. This guy here, he's doing a kiln, and that's what the big hole in the middle is, and he'll probably, knowing him, be stomping in mud today.
I'm a moneyer and a trader, and I'll buy in silver from the Middle East, from the Indies, from Moorish Spain.
What Sven is doing is thoroughly authentic, but I'm not entirely sure plastic badges were around in the Civil War.
Badges, postcards, bookmarks, commanders and cannons.
And you're members of the Civil War Society, are you?
Yes, we're in the Roundhead Association.
No, nothing to do with the Royalists, then?
Certainly not. No, we only sell their badge under protest.
Come on, ladies and gentlemen, you know you want to. Hand-cast English pewter, and only £1.20, do you, sir?
I don't really mind who wins, I just like watching it.
I thought it'd be very interesting for my son, and he's very into old castles and knights and armour and things like that anyway.
Hello.
Perhaps predictably, the camp followers are mainly women, but more and more often these days they have ambitions beyond a bit of felt making.
Well, I'd pick up a weapon and defend myself, you know.
Yeah, but would you go on the attack?
Well, I certainly would. If someone came up to me, I'd attack them, wouldn't I? If they were,
So you're frightened?
No. I fight anyway, so...
Although you could always stick to the rather more traditional and do a bit of sewing. If military strategy is your thing, you can pick up some pretty handy hints at these do's on running your own battle. The cowardly Roman tortoise was a fairly foolproof way of protecting yourself from missiles, which was a very sensible strategy, because the Romans themselves were very nearly at the top of the class in catapult technology. The catapult, of course, being your basic flange and sprocket gearing mechanism.
Tremendous range, and as I've said before, catapulter fires again. Look at all I think. Oh dear.
Having softened up the enemy by pelting them with things, you could finish them off with a charge, which, in the Romans' case, starts off as a bit of a stroll, really.
Then at the last minute, they'll break into a charge with a mighty war cry.
This was a weapon that every Viking would have owned. A hand axe. He could have built his house with it, build his fences with it, and also defend himself with it.
Pretty sharp, or is it a blunt?
This is a blunt fighting one.
I mean, in those days, would that have been pretty sharp?
That edge would have been a hardened edge. It would have been like a razor. Obviously, we've got to use, although still quite capable of killing anybody, we've got to use what we call reenactment edges.
You don't fight with that?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You must be out of your tree.
I've been called that quite a few times.
By medieval times, archery was the thing, and the English were even winning battles with bows and arrows.
Come here.
But what gave archery the red card and sent it off the battlefield forever was gunpowder and the musket. It was all very well for Sam to pick up his musket, but it wasn't exactly an AK-47. The technology was pretty basic. The musketeer had to prime his weapon, stick a wad of powder down the barrel, pack it down, drop a ball on the top, and then ignite the mixture, all of which could be done in slightly more time than it takes to softly boil an egg. Your only consolation was that it took the same time for the enemy, and you just had to hope the cavalry didn't charge until you were ready. Once you were ready, however, the volley was pretty impressive.
You don't rush into a skirmish. The idea is to annoy the enemy.
By Waterloo in 1815, they'd almost cracked it, and this set piece between Napoleon's Guard and a Highland regiment is staged as a kind of musketry World Cup.
On they go. They're charging with pistols, which is an interesting but not very effective tactic, because pistols are even more inaccurate than muskets, and frankly, you might as well throw the pistols at the French. You've got more chance of hurting them. The French thought the light dragoons had been on the ball, they would have gone in with the sabre. On the other side, marksman. 2 down. Oh dear.
Oh dear again.
Ladies, and it was their job to look
Oh, and a real lovely oh dear there.
And the French are looking, oh no! And one of the French broken away, and one of the soft, oh dear.
In practice sessions, the Romans used blunted weapons. It's not entirely clear whether this is because training a legionary is expensive and they don't want to lose him before the match, or whether it's to protect them from the attentions of the savage knife wielder masquerading as Hattie Jakes, who was the medical orderly.
What was happening to them? Here, for instance, we have an instrument used to take legs off and various limbs which were in the way.
Not that it was a much more cheery prospect to find yourself in the hands of a Civil War carpenter come surgeon.
Chirurgeon, sir. Chirurgeon. Nay, not surgeon. It was chirurgeon in my day.
Maybe it's the prospect of treatment by these hackers, but it's amazing how few real injuries there seem to be.
He had a pike in the eye, I think, sometime last year, but nothing like really serious. Nothing.
That pike in the eye is the sort of thing we all have most days, isn't it, really?
But like not like major serious, is it really?
They all come off with cuts and bruises, but they're men, they can handle it.
The biggest injury we get are people losing a couple of teeth, or a broken nose, or perhaps putting their teeth with their lips. And what happens then? Well, I shouldn't laugh really, but what happens is it's incorrect use of shield.
Of course, the highlight of these reenactments is the big set-piece battle with perhaps a couple of thousand participants. This one is an assault by a Royal Army on a parliamentarian's camp. Classic baddies against the goodies. Well, after an hour or so, they fought themselves to a standstill, to be continued perhaps on the next bank holiday at some other English heritage site. For now, the armies disband, the muskets lie silent, the battle axes, the shields, the Roman spears are all packed away in the back of the Range Rover, and civilian life returns.
Let the dead arise.